My mother pulled some strings and spent a lot of money to find a pretty girl from outside the village through the village matchmaker, Zhang Pozi. That night, she was dragged into the room by my brother. Listening to the wretched screams from the room, my mother stood in the courtyard, grinning from ear to ear. Now I finally get to have a grandson to hold. But after a few days, that woman hanged herself. Before her death, she cut her wrist, letting out a lot of blood that smeared the entire room. She hanged herself facing the doorway. The village chief looked at the woman's body, then at the blood-smeared room, his face turning ominously dark, blood smeared on the walls, a hanging body at the door. This is meant to bring a curse upon your whole family. My mother was terrified upon hearing this and stood trembling beside the corpse, saying, "Village chief, you know this village is full of bachelors, and my son is getting old without a wife. I was just anxious, so I thought of this method." Saying this, my mother kicked the corpse on the ground a couple of times, then spat on it. At least, she could have given birth to a chubby grandson for my son before dying. It's such bad luck. I bought this loss-making commodity. Why are you looking at me like that? You're also a loss-making commodity. In a few years, it'll sell you too. I cowered behind the door, watching my mother's ferocious expression, then looking at the gruesome corpse on the ground, my face turning pale. "All right, why are you still making noise at this hour?" The village chief frowned and scolded. My mother immediately fell silent. The village chief sat at the courtyard gate, smoking heavily, his face so dark it could drip water. "This girl was bought by you, tortured to this point, and cursed before her death. She must have hated your family to the core. Spend some money to give her a grand funeral, and cut a lock of her hair for Zhang Pozi to burn at the place where she trafficked girls. It'll bring her soul peace, so she won't become a lonely ghost." My mother was unhappy at the thought of a grand funeral, and having to visit Zhang Pozi. These two things would cost money, making her more uncomfortable than being stabbed with a knife. According to her plan, she wanted to wrap her in a straw mat and leave her to be devoured by the wild beasts in the mountains, without the trouble of digging a grave. Now, she had to spend money on a grand funeral, which was more troublesome and costly. My mother immediately refused without hesitation. The village chief, unfazed, sat smoking leisurely, looking at my mother with a cold smile. "Da Xin, now is not the time to save money. You can ignore my advice, but I must say this ugly truth. You treated people like livestock, bought and sold them, then tortured the girl to the point of suicide. She cursed you in the most vicious way before her death, her resentment reaching its peak. If you still care about a little money, and don't handle this properly, you'll be waiting for your whole family to be wiped out," the village chief said in the most indifferent tone. "Wiped out?" My mother's eyes widened at the mention of these words. Anxiously, she asked, "Will my son be all right?" The village chief snorted. "When I say wiped out, of course, it includes your son, your only boy, right?" This statement immediately struck a nerve with my mother. My brother was her favorite, treated like a treasure. At the mention of his potential harm, she became serious. She looked at the village chief in a somewhat flattering manner. "Village chief, please don't take offense at what I said earlier. I'm just a woman. You can treat my words as nothing. As long as my son is unharmed, I'll do anything." The village chief asked my mother to buy some gold ingots and paper money from the incense shop in the town. Everything had to be of the best quality, without any thought of saving money, as it was a matter of life and death. Meanwhile, he disappeared mysteriously, leaving my mother and me to deal with the situation. Before long, the village chief and a few villagers carrying a bronze coffin appeared in our yard. Everyone in the village gathered to watch the commotion. They whispered at the yard entrance, "Have you heard? Da Xin just bought a pretty girl, and she was tortured to death by her son. Her death was extremely tragic, and she cursed them with the breaking of the family line. I heard too. She died soon after being bought. What a waste of money. Da Xing's son is quite formidable. You guys don't speak nonsense. This bronze coffin is for suppressing evil spirits. This girl had a lot of resentment when she died. Da Xin is surely afraid of retaliation, though she must have spent all the money she set aside for her coffin." My mother couldn't bear the gossip around her, and slapped me immediately. "You useless commodity. Can't you see them talking about me here? Why are you standing there?" I covered my swollen face, shooing away the spectators with a broom. Before long, the village chief had set up the funeral hall. However, the woman had bled everywhere when she died, and the village chief asked my mother to clean her before laying her in the coffin. My mother found it ominous and had me do the cleaning. I suppressed my fear and went back to the blood-smeared room, filled with the stench of blood. As I cleaned the corpse, my clothes stuck to my body. It might have been my imagination, but I felt that the blood-smeared parts of the room became even more eerily red. I dared not tell my mother. I was afraid she would hit me. I went out and informed the village chief that the body was cleaned. Upon seeing me, my brother kicked me to the ground. "You useless commodity, taking so long to clean a dead body. Were you trying to kill me? Wait until this matter is settled, and I'll show you." I stayed silent, bowing my head. I knew if I dared to speak, he would beat me to death. The village chief, witnessing the scene, remained silent and urged my brother to carry the woman into the coffin while cleaning. I didn't dare to look at the girl directly. Now, As she lay there, she seemed beautiful, even without any color on her face. Her broken beauty was captivating. My mother kept saying, "What a pity, what a pity. If she had given my son a chubby son, it would have been so lovely." This loss-making commodity is just unlucky. My brother's eyes never left the woman's body. He kept licking his lips, his expression making people very uncomfortable. I had seen this expression once before on an elder in the village. It made me feel nauseous. When he caught me looking at him, he glared at me fiercely, and I quickly lowered my head. Afraid of another beating, the village chief performed a ritual with some instruments, continuously chanting. When he finally closed the coffin lid, my brother still gazed at the woman, reluctant to look away. The village chief instructed my brother, my mother, and me to go to the funeral hall to burn incense and kowtow to the woman. My brother and my mother refused to kowtow. Helpless, the village chief had me kowtow in their place, one after another, 9 times. When I got up, I felt a bit dizzy. While we were burning the paper money, a gust of cold wind suddenly blew, and the paper money landed on my brother and caught fire. My brother screamed in pain, rolling on the ground in front of the funeral hall. While I found the scene somewhat funny, I couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. The fire on my brother's body wouldn't go out, and my mother was in a frenzy. Finally, the village chief sprinkled glutinous rice on him, and a black smoke emerged, extinguishing the fire at last. My brother's skin was charred, and my mother was heartbroken. The village chief said it was the woman buying my brother's life with money, wanting him to go with her. My mother immediately overthrew the woman's spirit tablet, cursing, "You wretched thing, I bought you back to enjoy a good life, but you ruined everything. You kicked away my money, and even in death, you want my son to accompany you. Disgusting." She spat on the ground to express her dissatisfaction. The village chief sighed helplessly, went to the coffin, and pasted a yellow paper charm on it. "Miss, I know they wronged you, but this situation has already happened. You're separated by life and death. Don't do anything that damages your virtue. Reincarnate properly and stop struggling. It'll have dozens people. Take your hair back and burn it. It's a way for your soul to return home." My mother originally wanted to make a show of it and didn't want to go find Zhang Pozi. Zhang Pozi was known in our village for being ruthless. If you wanted her to do something, you had to show her the money first, but now, she had no choice. My mother grumbled, and the sharp look from the village chief made her stop immediately. We continued to light incense, but my mother and my brother's incense couldn't light up, only mine did. They tried several times, but it was the same. The village chief shouted, "Fine. If you won't listen to this old man's advice, don't blame me for being ruthless." He scolded my mother with a cold voice, "Go and fetch some rooster's blood and a calligraphy brush. I don't believe she can't be controlled." My mother quickly brought the items. I saw the village chief pour rooster's blood into the brush, and they each held one, and flicked red lines around the coffin. The fresh blood on the coffin kept dripping down, and I shivered, feeling like the blood-stained room was right in front of my eyes again, making it hard for me to breathe. At the moment the village chief flicked the rooster's blood, a terrifying sound, like nails scratching the coffin, came from inside. I immediately hid behind my mother, not caring if she would hit me. After a while, everything fell silent, and black smoke rose from the top of the coffin, sending chills down our spines. We continued to light incense, and this time it finally caught fire. After everything was done, the village chief seemed to relax a bit. He still held his dried tobacco pipe as usual, but his expression was heavier than before. "She has been subdued with rooster's blood. There shouldn't be any more trouble. Have someone guard tonight, and there won't be any more issues after the burial tomorrow morning." I had no doubt this matter would fall on me. My mother would never stay to guard the coffin, and my brother had just been burned like that. She wouldn't let her precious son guard the unlucky loss-making commodity. After the village chief left, they gestured for me to kneel on the cushion. Though I was reluctant, I had to obey. I stayed with the coffin the whole night, not leaving its side. At first, I was terrified. Even the slightest movement or rustle would scare me half to death. I was highly tense, but gradually, I noticed nothing strange was happening. Just as I was dozing off, I didn't know when my brother quietly entered. My drowsiness vanished instantly, and I wanted to ask him what he was doing, but his fierce gaze stopped me. Then he chased me out. I wanted to see what he was doing, but when I looked back, he threw a candlestick at me, and I didn't dare to turn back. But at the moment the door was closing, I clearly saw my brother lifting the coffin lid. He went inside the coffin, and I watched in horror, wanting to shout to stop him, but I couldn't make a sound. After about 15 minutes, my brother, a satisfied expression was on his face, which made me feel nauseous and clenched my fists even tighter. He came up to me and said, "If you dare to tell anyone what happened tonight, they'll sell you to Zhang Pozi in the village. Even though you're young, he won't hesitate. After all, you're a girl and can still fetch some money." I glared at him, but he acted as if he didn't notice, and left with the same expression. After he left, I couldn't help but vomit, trying to expel the filthy things I had just witnessed. Back at the funeral hall, I tidied up the woman's clothes. After everything was done, whether it was my imagination or not, I felt her pale face was turning rosy, as if she were about to come back to life. I was frightened and quickly closed the coffin lid. I continued to stay in the funeral hall, until the village chief brought the coffin bearers the next morning. He seemed a bit surprised to see me. Didn't anything strange happen last night? You didn't touch the coffin, did you? I shook my head. No, I stayed with it all night without any issues, and I didn't dare to touch that coffin. I was terrified. How could I go near it? I didn't tell the village chief about what my brother did. He had warned me last night, and if I did, he would indeed sell me. Deep down, I didn't want to tell the village chief either. I had a vague feeling that things wouldn't be that simple. Indeed, when the coffin bearers went to lift the coffin, they saw the blood on it, and immediately paled. Chief, when you asked us to bring this coffin, I knew something was off, but I didn't think too much about it now. The blood on it means something is wrong with the person inside. We work in this trade. There are some people we can't touch. You should find someone else for this. With that, they were about to leave. The village chief immediately explained, you've misunderstood. The situation is not as it's rumored outside. Dashing brought this girl, and she had a sudden illness when she arrived. Without appropriate medication here, she didn't want to suffer anymore, so she committed suicide. Please don't believe the rumors. This blood is from her clothes when she arrived. It's all because Dashing was careless while tidying her up. I understand that everyone must still be uneasy about carrying this coffin, and the price must be different from usual. The village chief forced a smile and asked my mother to bring more money, which led to another round of complaints from her. As the saying goes, money can make the ghost grind. After everything was settled, a few people gritted their teeth and took on the job. Even though anyone with common sense could hear the village chief's lies, they still succumbed to the temptation of money and agreed to carry the coffin, despite the potential trouble it might bring them. But when they tried to lift the coffin, it didn't budge at all.